Hey guys, so House of the Dragon episode 7, which is the penultimate episode, came out last night, and it is the best episode of House of the Dragon in a very long time. Maybe ever. There were some episodes in season 1 that were pretty good, but this is like the first time that I can remember being this enthralled by the events of the show. And I think a lot of what's happening here is that episode 7, especially in the context of season 2, is when things just happen. So much of my criticisms and other people's criticisms of House of the Dragon so far is that there has just been not a lot to pay attention to. It's been, dare I say, boring. Which is like insane to say for a show with this much talent on it and this high of a budget, coming off of the heels of which was at one point the most popular show in the universe. House of the Dragon has every opportunity and all the capabilities of being the most entertaining show on television, but it just hasn't been for so long, and it has finally reached what I think we all knew it could be in the last episode. And there are tons of examples, like concretely, that I can give to back this up. I mean, just every part of the episode was so antithetical to so much of what we had earlier in the season. Obviously, the most famous thing that I could talk about, or the most infamous, I guess, at this point, is Daemon just kind of bumming it at Harrenhal for 6 episodes so far. He's talked to Alice Rivers, he's hallucinated, he's grieved, he's been freaked out, he's been paranoid, but for the most part, nothing has really happened. And we've gotten, I think, one scene so far of him talking to the River Lords, and then he worked with the Blackwoods to, put horrors on the Riverlands. But that's 2 scenes. And it's been 6 episodes of him there so far. And it was coming to the point where it felt like Daemon was a bit of a waste, because he was, if people forget, really the focal point of the last season. So much of the first season of the show was advertised as Daemon versus Rhaenyra, who would take the throne, who would not, right? And his kind of like presence and power in the series, especially bouncing off of Rhaenyra, when it was gone, it took something away. And to have him just so stagnant for so long felt really bad. So to then just immediately switch over to his phenomenal scene with, I believe, Oscar Tully, and him having to make a decision in the moment, make forward progress as a character, I think it felt really good. The same thing could be said for Rhaenyra. A huge criticism of this season was that Rhaenyra hasn't been doing anything. And of course, in the show itself, Rhaenyra is angry that she hasn't been doing anything. She's wanted to do things. But I was actually just talking about this earlier today. A fiction commenting on its own shortcomings does not negate those shortcomings, right? So even if Rhaenyra is pissed about not being able to do things, she's still not being able to do things, and that's not any more interesting for like us watchers than it is for her. And it's just been this like constant, I can't do this, I can't go here, I'm being questioned on this, and she finally just makes a decision of, I'm going to do it, screw it all, the doubters say, I'm going to do this thing. And she gets the dragon seeds. She realized, I'm going to have to sacrifice lives. I'm going to leave them to burn and die, but I'm going to do something. And it works. We had forward progress. It's funny because we also get Alicent, who is, I think, a representation of the rest of the season. Where Alicent goes, she leaves King's Landing because I guess she's just kind of like fed up at this point with all of the men being so just crappy. And then she doesn't do anything. Now, I'm not saying that scene is terrible with Alicent, but it is reminiscent of there being things happening on screen, but not necessarily having them translate to the plot. But be that as it may, the episode as a whole, I think, was really cool. Aegon continues, I think, to be much more interesting, and his storyline continues to be much more heartfelt and compelling than I was expecting. And I know pretty much everything there is to know about the Dance of the Dragons because of how obsessed I am with this content. And him and Larys together, I think, is forming a really unexpected and interesting narrative bond. But still, everyone came to this episode, or I should say came away from this episode, because of the dragons, simply amazed. It was a phenomenal just display of all the things that the show could be. For the last 25 minutes of the show, it very much reminded me of, I think it was season 7 of Game of Thrones, with the Loot Train attack. You know, the Loot Train attack was this huge spectacle where a Dothraki horde descended upon the Lannister army, and then Daenerys came in riding on Drogon, and it was our first time seeing a dragon in a like warfare setting. And it was amazing, and it was a completely different way of kind of visualizing how the dragons would impact the narrative of the seasons going forward, especially because, you know, like, this was the end game. they're in Westeros, they're fighting everybody, and that was really cool. And I think something similar is happening here, in that we got to see the dragons in a different way. There have been a couple times in the show where, you know, we're very close to, you know, the characters as they're approaching dragons, they're talking to dragons. You know, you have Aemond first taming Vhagar, and then you have Daemon going up to Vermithor at the end of season 1. But I think there was something completely different about this particular episode and the last 20 minutes, because in most of the cases with dragons interacting with people, aside from like Tyrion in season 6, in most cases of the dragons interacting with people, it's Targaryens, and we already kind of know that the Targaryens are a bit safer when it comes to the dragons, so we don't necessarily like fear for them as much. But like here, it was just like kaijus. And that's so cool. We got to have a completely unbroken shot of Hugh in the pit with Vermithor, and seeing how terrifying actually being around these dragons were. And of course we go off with Ulf, and then he is completely at the mercy of Silverwing, who just kind of takes him in like a little kid, which is really cool. But it was just things happening, and that's so interesting. I don't really have much more to say other than I thought it was a phenomenal episode. We clearly got to see where the budget was going because the lack of dragons in the previous episodes, I'm assuming it's going to be episode 7 and 8 is where all of kind of like the money-making magic is happening. So we'll see how that goes, but they finally did it. They finally did something. They showed some dragons. They have moved us forward, and it feels really, really good to be in this position narratively. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like what you heard, like, comment here, you know, subscribe, all that good stuff. I do these kind of, you know, little reacts and whatnot to stuff I watch. I recently watched Deadpool and Wolverine, and you'll have to see my video on that very soon. So thank you all for coming, and I'll talk to you all again soon.